Um, I think this term doesn't require any further introduction. Right? Yes, but when you think about electric vehicles, there are a few things that comes in mind. It's expensive because it has a higher cost of purchase compared to the alternative petrol or diesel vehicle. There is a EV charging infra issues. Lithium-ion batteries, they don't last long, like eternal. They will last only 7 years. And above all, there are naysayers as well. They say that, well, electricity is still from fossil fuels. What you claim as clean tech mobility is not at all clean. Well, for a second, yes, they're all right. And that's where the challenge that comes forth in front of us. When we think about electric vehicles or electric mobility, there are few things that comes in mind. We would say that, fine, am I going to buy an electric vehicle because it is cheaper to run? Or should I consider or believe this as a nation that can I gain energy independence out of this? I was a kid when the Gulf War happened. Today there is another war. I think the underlying principle is still the principles or the business of energy that drives this geopolitics. Now, before we explore over the next 15 minutes this entire idea of electric mobility on how it makes our country energy independent, even financially independent to some extent, let me start with something else. Let me take back to 100 years ago, if you go back, this is a picture of photograph from New York Street. And it is all about how you embrace change. There was a single car in 1900. 13 years later, there was hardly a horse cart, and the rest were all automobiles. Of course, there is a debate that the photograph on the left, the car was an electric car, but that we'll debate sometime later. Now, what does it really mean? That are we looking into the future which is just 10 years, 15 years down the line, where you will embrace electric mobility with both the hands, saying that, well, this is I need to do because, well, it has technically zero emissions, lesser noise, maybe more economical, and above all, very, very important for our environment. So, what excites an electric mobility? And I was just listening to Raghav earlier. He mentioned about design thinking. That's something that we bring a lot into technology these days. But 20 years ago, a lot of software started coming into automobiles. And electric mobility is nothing but a piece of software surrounded by some electromechanical components, including the battery, including the motors, including some mechanical components, and so on. Well, I think there is more to that. There is something called electrons instead of molecules, right? Because as now the journey worldwide, there's something called sustainability that is often we're being referred very, very often, such as ESG programs and so on. Electric mobility drives the sustainability for our planet Earth. Of course, there was one very interesting counter where one of my colleagues mentioned that, we don't produce much of lithium. Well, recently we discovered lithium in Jammu and Kashmir, but we are still going to import more of lithium. We are anyway importing oil and gas or importing crude oil. Well, how does it make a difference? Well, when I import oil, I convert it into petrol and diesel, I smoke it out. There's no way I can capture it. When I import lithium, it stays here. I can take it through what you call as a circular economy or recyclability or reusability of various components that forms an electric mobility. Now, having said that, there are obviously a lot of naysayers being referred to, saying that, well, electrons is a primary fuel, or electricity is a fuel. Well, it still comes from fossil fuels, right? It's still not green enough. There's not enough solar and wind, which is true, by the way. Yeah, our grid in India is 20% powered by renewable energy. However, the journey that we started somewhere around 10, 15 years ago, nothing happens overnight. It takes time. It takes time for a transformation and for us to embrace that particular change. But having said that, an electric vehicle, to run an electric vehicle is 1/4 or less than 1/4 of the cost compared to running a petrol or diesel vehicle. Now it's because electricity is cheaper. Not that it is cheaper electricity that we talk about, but generally speaking, India as a country we are blessed by Surya Devta and Varun Devta, that is solar and wind, that helps generate electricity on a renewable, Akshay Urja we call it, right? So renewables, that comes on and on and on until several centuries forward. So having put forth one perspective that if these electric vehicles are here to stay, there is one more or very important parameter that comes into force that's called the connected vehicles. People who are involved into logistics or you use logistics programs, right? I mean, the trucks to move your materials, your goods. I'm not sure if you're already aware of this, that India, due to our natural trust deficit issues into our socio-economic order, we have a problem here that you don't believe a driver that he's going to sincerely drive from Mumbai to Delhi without the theft of the fuel. A logistic company actually gives him some 50,000 bucks and tells him that better you drive to Delhi to Mumbai, do whatever you want. But if it's an electric vehicle or electric truck, it changes everything because you have created a digital twin of that vehicle onto your server, which means that you monitor the position of the vehicle, the speed of the vehicle, the driving behavior of the driving skills or driving behavior of the driver himself, and finally you monitor the fuel. So what does this mean? It means that there is a major tectonic shift from an IC engine vehicle to an electric vehicle, not just by some saving of emissions, not by sustainable initiative, but also literally the entire techno-commercial dynamics that will change the entire landscape of the mobility industry in general. Well, let's look at some numbers. And these numbers are very, very startling in nature. We are all aware that we import a lot of oil. We are also aware that there are hundreds and thousands of vehicles that flies on the roads every day. But probably few of us might not be aware or might be aware that in top 50 cities of India, that includes, let's say, Baroda, for example, there are 100 million plus vehicles, both transport and non-transport category. Not only that, we consume more than 800 million liters of fuel every day. And that's fuel is only diesel, petrol, and to some extent CNG. There's another perspective that the emissions primarily might be driven by two-wheelers or three-wheelers per se, but no. There are these commercial vehicles, and trucks especially, which constitutes less than 5% of the vehicles on the road, but they are responsible for more than 40% of emissions and also consumption of fuel on the road. Now, with this, we need to look at this EV adoption, mostly moving from individual adoption to a nationwide initiative. And why this is so important to understand, and I'm sometimes so curious that while the e-mobility or EV revolution started somewhere around 10 to 12 years ago, why as a country we probably got delayed in taking such an important call, though the decision has just been taken a couple of years ago in terms of electric buses, in terms of electric cars. There is a FAME to subsidy of 10,000 crores being given to the industry and so on. But at the end of the day, we got to move from an individual adoption or individual theory of unit economics to a nationwide initiative of how we can create a new India that while we have been independent since 75 years, we have still not been independent for our energy needs, despite all the natural resources that we already have in place. Well, those natural resources were there earlier, were not techno-commercially viable, but today an EV or electric mobility industry makes an entire thing in terms of total cost of ownership, in terms of unit economics, completely viable. And at the end of the day, the fuel part, which is the most important one, if 30% of our EV, of the vehicles, they go electric, we will save enough to fund both education and healthcare budgets of India. Now these numbers, China, our neighbor, recognized this in 1996. An e-mobility revolution started in China by a single bureaucrat who went to the government and convinced them that, hey guys, give me this opportunity to transform the landscape of our country in adopting e-mobility. Now let's also be very, very clear about this, is the current consumption levels will not stay as it is. As the economy grows, the consumption will increase. Yeah, so what we see the figures today in 2023, yeah, will be different when we reach at 2040 or 2050. So the entire initiative need to be extremely holistic, which also means that yes, the government does it for a bit of it, the industry need to do, the entrepreneurs need to do, but at the end of the day, I think an Indian in me, a patriot in me need to be awakened that I got to move not just looking at how much mileage or kitna deti hai kind of analysis, but move into a very holistic adoption of the EV platform. Well, there are other let's say factors that we need to count, moving from the energy independence or to a certain extent, let's say self-sufficiency of energy in our country. There is a lot to do with the socio-economic order. Now, there's one project that we are working upon. You haven't seen electric trucks, yeah, don't you, right? They're yet to come. You've seen a lot of green number plates on electric buses or cars or even two-wheelers. You haven't seen trucks yet. But if you really look at that particular industry, I mean, in terms of the commercial vehicles, I think we have a bigger problem. There's a bigger problem of socio-economic issues associated with the trucking industry. If you want to move that material very quickly, let's say from Bhopal to Ahmedabad or from Mumbai to Chennai, nowadays you try to put 2 or maybe 3 drivers in the truck because they need to keep on driving non-stop because you're in some kind of urgency. Those truck drivers don't visit their families. Yeah, there is obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the very urge to play out with the theft of the fuel and so on. There is something called inclusion, which is completely absent from the trucking industry, which, by the way, has been on and on and on despite lockdowns, despite pandemic. But this is one industry which doesn't stop at all. In lockdowns, the 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers, they did come to a halt. But the commercial ones, they ran to transport medicines, groceries, essential items, and so on. So, as Indian, as an engineer, as an entrepreneur, I am probably in a very unique position today. And not only me, there are thousands and millions of me like me in this country, which has a unique opportunity to create a difference. That, well, can I bring a change, not only in terms of EV and lesser emissions and so on, but a massive impact in the socio-economic order of this country, especially deprived classes such as the commercial vehicle drivers. Well, we have started sharing a new term called AQIs, right? Air Quality Index. If you go to Delhi, in most of the conversation in the conference room happens around AQI to start with. They tell me, oh, you're from Baroda, you should have very clean air, I guess. In Delhi, we always suffocate every day. But I don't think that's true, because the air quality is an issue wherever we go. Now, despite that, we have been digging the planet Earth to fetch crude. We'll be digging for another minerals, because an EV has larger content or content of minerals compared to an IC engine. You're going to dig up further. But I think at the end of the day, we also have a unique opportunity to create what we call as a circular economy. Well, I don't know how much of us will be really knowing this. I came to know recently only that when plastics were invented, the engineers who invented plastics said that you please commercialize this only on a condition that you are going to recycle it. Well, this has been 50 years ago, and I don't think we have ever recycled any of the plastic, barring some sporadic occasions here and there. Same thing applies for electric vehicles as well, or for that matter, many of the things that we use in our materialistic life. But EV is a very compelling factor in terms of recyclability. It's not about just batteries, but about every other element that goes into an electric vehicle. Now, surely there are critics, they would say that, and I had reservations about this, that we don't even recycle the battery of a mobile phone or a laptop batteries. How come we are going to do this for electric vehicles? But the best part is that electric vehicles from electric EVs come from automotive industry, who are known for their competitiveness. They are known for their ecosystem that takes care of the life cycle of the product. They don't even leave the warranty of a pre-owned vehicle for that matter. So I think an e-mobility ecosystem then falls in a safer hand into the experts of the automotive industry, who brings a new thinking or new design thinking in terms of the circular economy around the electric mobility. There is one thing which is very probably not discussed much or underestimated is the noise pollution. Very often, I live here in Vasna Bailey area, and sometime at 5 a.m. in the morning, I'm able to listen to the tick of my watch because it is pin drop silence, which otherwise we are unable to listen to it. So what does it mean? That there is a granular level noise pollution which is always around us starting say 7 a.m. in the morning, which lasts until midnight. An electric vehicle in fact changes this because there is a new regulation that has come that you need to put an artificial noise in an electric vehicle to ensure the safety of the pedestrian, which means that just about 30 kilometer speed, this is a European regulation which has just come by the way, that once the EV touches 30 kmph, this artificial sound appears so that obviously if it's driving through the city streets, the pedestrians or the people who cross the road are made aware that there is a vehicle coming in. Well, EVs are here. Some of you or most of you have seen these photographs and across all the categories. But when it talks about electric vehicles, well, there is also a discussion about EV charging infrastructure. And also the EV charging infrastructure is here as well. Now, why do I really want to push this, I mean, a thought into your mind, into my mind, into my colleagues' mind, is that why an EV at all? Apart from the factors that I just mentioned, there is always a doubt that there's something what we call as a range anxiety, that there are no enough EV charging infrastructure. But let me highlight one important thing. Our daily mobility needs are less than 51 kilometers per day, and that is for 80% of the time, right? It's only 20% of the time your mobility needs are in the vicinity of 80 or 100 kilometers, where you really require or really need a range anxiety to be solved. Now, where there are various companies like us, Charzone, for example, or Tata Power, or Reliance, and so on, they are trying to solve this problem by setting up more charging stations. But at the end of the day, adopting an EV, if you are a doctor, if you're a lawyer or a professor, I think it's a low-hanging fruit for you because your mobility needs are limited. But if you are a commercial, you are into trade and commerce, yes, I think there is a very, very profound case of adopting a commercial vehicle or replacing a current trucks that you have, or you buy a new one. You won't buy a diesel or a petrol, but you actually embrace an electric vehicle. At the end of the day, for e-mobility adoption, it is not a singular decision. Let's be very clear that unlike IC engines, because you never thought about it, because the petrol pumps were already there. When you bought your first car, I don't think you remember it. You just went to a showroom, you just found a good model of a car, you negotiated a price if at all it was possible, and you bought one vehicle. But in terms of electric vehicle, that's a huge paradigm shift to the governments taking the central role, plus the industry taking a huge leap forward, and it has come to a level where there is a demand but not enough supply. There are more people waiting to adopt an EV, but there is challenges obviously on the supply chain management and the automotive industry sitting on the fence for a while, but now have taken a final call saying that, well, Tesla has done it, so we got to do it as well. So now every automotive major in the world has moved into design and manufacturing of electric vehicles. And finally, at the end of the day, I want to share to some of the young entrepreneurs or entrepreneur mind here in this hall is an e-mobility ecosystem is massively entrepreneurial. While a young company like us did set up a benchmark for the large MNCs for EV charging. For example, you drive from Ahmedabad to Bangalore, you'll find EV charging. You can actually drive an electric car from Ahmedabad to Bangalore without range anxiety because our company Charzone has high-speed charging stations at every 50, 60 kilometer distance, and that too on food court. So you have all amenities and everything to enjoy. And we have a tagline called, "We love to recharge you while we recharge your car." So there's another paradigm shift that a refueling, which was just a 2 or 3 minute affair, has changed to 20 minutes. But again, it comes with a plethora of new opportunities that comes into the play. And finally, last but not the least, the ecosystem play in terms of various components can be very, very entrepreneurial as well, because large corporates may not have the agility which a young mind or a young team would have. So with this, I would like to end about e-mobility. And if this helps, once you leave this room, that if you are going to take a decision of buying an EV, I think my time was well spent over here. Thank you so much.